using a government issued currency, you do not have true financial freedom for a variety of reasons. That's because ultimately fiat currency is centralized. It has censorship risks. It has seizing risks. It has surveillance risks. It has all sorts of risks baked into it because of the properties that fiat money has. Whereas Bitcoin has really powerful properties, such as it's very portable. It can be taken anywhere with you anytime. It's accessible 24/7. You can access your Bitcoin anytime, anywhere. It's undebasable. Bitcoin has a terminal supply of 21 million coins, no more, no less. Well, actually, technically, slightly less, but that's the nuance we don't need to provide right now. But 21 million coins forever. It also offers a way to transact that is free from censorship. So your transaction cannot be blocked on the protocol level. It's also quite durable because it's digital. It's portable and durable. It can't rust away. It's hard to lose if you manage your keys properly. And of course, it's also quite liquid, relatively liquid at this point. So it has sort of like all these different things that come together to create what I would argue is the perfect money, right? So if you live in a place, for example, in Russia, and you're a nonprofit organization, for example, like the Anti-Corruption Foundation, which was founded by Alexei Navalny, who, rest in peace, was murdered by the Russian regime last year in an Arctic prison. He started the Anti-Corruption Foundation as sort of the leading opposition to Vladimir Putin. Of course, the moment Vladimir Putin froze their bank accounts and cut them off from the financial system. So you have a civil society organization. You have the leading opposition to a dictator being debanked, being deplatformed from the fiat currency system with the click of a button. And that is the case for pretty much human rights groups, political opposition, critics, journalists, dissidents, and activists everywhere in the world living under dictators or authoritarian regimes. That is the reality that they face. They are cut out from the financial system before they can even step into it or before they can even take action, because it's such a silent and opaque and easy way for a dictator to silence dissent, right? To silence any of the criticism they're receiving, to suppress political competition, or anyone just critical of them. And so Bitcoin offers financial freedom for all those because of all those properties that I explained before. It provides a way for these organizations and these individuals and these dissidents to keep going, to keep their advocacy alive, to keep the information flowing, to keep transactions flowing. It's a way because they can use Bitcoin to transact without being censored by a dictator. They can use it without being debased, in the sense that, like if the central bank decides to expand the money supply by 50% overnight and wipe out your savings, and you wake up the next morning and, you can only buy a loaf of bread instead of two, or worst case, if you're dealing with that sort of devaluation, it's probably a much more extreme case, and you've probably had inflation for a while, and, your wages are evaporating by the week. Bitcoin is a solution to that. It offers an alternative. And it's a matter of people understanding that alternative so that they can use it in these situations. But ultimately, that Bitcoin is financial freedom, and so it is a tool for human rights, because people doing human rights work under authoritarian regimes need a way to transact and save without being debased, censored, and debanked, and Bitcoin offers them that. And so, in the words of Alex Gladstein himself, who's the chief strategy officer of the Human Rights Foundation, Bitcoin is one of the most powerful tools of human rights activism in the 21st century. I strongly agree with that assessment. In my work writing the Financial Freedom Report, we often cover stories of resistance through Bitcoin. These are things that are happening. The Anti-Corruption Foundation in Russia, like I was saying, they use Bitcoin now. I am good friends with Anna Chekovich, who is the financial director of the Anti-Corruption Foundation. She helped them get onto Bitcoin, and now they use Bitcoin to pay their salaries, to pay rent, to get money, to receive donations, right? Like, all of these things are just better on Bitcoin if you are an organization that is critical of the government. And you know what? I think at this point, when we look at the world, lots of people should be more critical of their governments. Right. And so, so basically Bitcoin is being used as a tool for democracy, for human rights. and for financial freedom more broadly around the world. And the reason is because it's a form of money that works when dictators shut everything else down.
I have an interesting intersection topic. How do you look at, I don't know if you have read that because it's like only since like the 31st of July. How do you look at Nayib Bukele extending his terms to no longer having the cap of like, okay, he cannot indefinitely run for president. I mean, in America, we have it like the 2 4-year cycles, and like after that, we need a change. He now eliminated that with, like, not he, but the El Salvadoran Congress eliminated that, which obviously is dominated by the party of Bukele. So basically, he did it. How do you look at that?
Yeah, I mean, so El Salvador has been a story I've been following very closely, both for my research and writing. Very pertinent to like kind of this topic of human rights and financial freedom and democracy as it relates to Bitcoin. Bukele first adopted Bitcoin in 2021. I thought it was pretty cool. I'm not gonna lie. And you know, I was also 21 at that time, so I had sort of a naive hope, if you will, that he would be different. He would be different than other politicians. Um, and that he would bring El Salvador to a better place. And in those 4 years, he's sort of just slowly, I've sort of I lost that faith slowly over the next 4 years as he sort of passed through various bills and took various actions that just sort of like were just one nail in the coffin after the other. 2025 specifically has been a pretty, it was a really big turn in El Salvador in terms of just like government consolidation, consolidation of power, removal of democratic checks and balances. And I can walk through this really quickly, but basically, it really the big red flag started when he struck a deal with the IMF for $1.4 billion, right? And in that deal, the government had to step away from Chivo Wallet, tightened AML and KYC, know your customer regulations. They made private sector acceptance voluntary for Bitcoin. And they also reverted tax payments back to USD. And so I saw this happen in late 2024. And, you know, when you make something voluntary acceptance paired with not allowing tax payments in it, it is no longer legal tender. Sure enough, within months, there was a reform to the Bitcoin bill in El Salvador. They removed it as legal tender. So they use Bitcoin, but it's actually not technically legal tender. And following that, he issued arrest warrants for independent journalists in the country for reporting on his relations with the gangs, who he claims to so strongly oppose. Then he claimed to be buying one Bitcoin a day, which I'm sure you also saw. An IMF progress report based on the deal that they had struck earlier in 2024 came out and basically claimed that, and I'm not saying trust the IMF by any means here, but the progress report claimed that actually the Bitcoin purchases that Bukele had been flaunting on social media were actually just consolidation from other wallets under government control. So he's just, what that basically they're trying to sit, what the IMF is claiming is that Bukele is just sending one Bitcoin a day from another wallet he already has to the public wallet that he has shared on the internet for people to audit. The problem is I don't trust the IMF or El Salvador. There's not enough transparency on either side of the situation to truly tell what's going on. Though I will say 2 financial executives at the central bank in El Salvador did say that that Bukele hasn't bought Bitcoin since February. So there's like some of the top financial voices in El Salvador are saying the same thing as the IMF. But, you know, Bukele still continues to flaunt the one Bitcoin a day purchases on social media. So there's just not enough transparency to tell what's happening on either side. And then after all this, so it's been a very dramatic 2025 already. And then about a month before he passed indefinite re-elections, he passed a foreign agents law. I don't know if you're familiar with foreign agents laws, but foreign agents laws are one of the most popular laws to pass in authoritarian regimes and in dictatorships. There is one in Nicaragua that's been used to shut down 5,600 nonprofit organizations. Russia has a foreign agents law. Georgia just passed a foreign agents law as well. And what a foreign agents law basically does is it restricts the finances of NGOs, nonprofits, and individuals that receive foreign funding. And the idea is that if you're someone receiving foreign funding, you're going to get taxed more. You need to disclose more of your finances, and you need to submit even more financial reporting. Like basically, they want a magnifying glass on anyone receiving money that isn't obtained locally. And so basically anyone receiving donations from abroad. And if you think about this, this is so anti-Bitcoin, right? Like Bitcoin is about the free flow of money. And, like and so much of my work spans about how nonprofits and dissidents can use Bitcoin to push back against authoritarian regimes that are doing stuff like that, right? So foreign agents law and Bitcoin are like antithetical to each other. So that was a really big red flag when Bukele passed a foreign agents law about a month before, and it imposed a 30% tax on foreign donations and a bunch of more reporting requirements and stuff like that. So basically, they're used to stifle civil society. They're used to silence dissent, and it's working. Right after that, the top human rights organization in El Salvador fled the country, citing heightened repression from Bukele's government. And then around 100 journalists, activists, academics, and lawyers also fled El Salvador after the passing of this foreign agents law. This is a sign of what's to come. This is a sign that behind the scenes, behind the social media, behind the PR that Bukele does, there is a crackdown right now on civil society. There is a stifling of critical voices. This is something that kind of seemed like it was culminating towards, but when he passed that law, it became clear that was his intention. And then, of course, within a month, El Salvador's Legislative Assembly passed constitutional changes that allow Bukele to run indefinitely. This doesn't mean that he's going to be in power forever, but considering the Legislative Assembly is, under his thumb, like they are, his people. It is likely, at the very least, it has paved the way for him to run. And if the people elect him, he will be elected. And if they don't elect him, I guess we'll see what happens. That'll be another test of his integrity. But yeah, I mean, it's I think El Salvador started on a grand experiment. I think it got a lot of us really excited. But I think the actions taken by Bukele and Bukele's government in 2025 and since the IMF deal have been really detrimental to both human rights, democracy, and financial freedom in a country that claims to be Bitcoin country. I think a lot of these things are just antithetical to Bitcoin. So I think people need to think more critically about El Salvador and about governments in general. I mean, I don't mean to necessarily single out El Salvador here any more than any other authoritarian regime in the world. There are actually much worse things happening around the world. And I will say, the IMF has played a really big role in propping up many dictators across the globe as well. So, there's a lot of factors. Nothing is black and white about this. It's very nuanced, but I encourage everyone to, do their own research and try to learn the best they can about these topics, especially in El Salvador, because it just offers such a vivid case study. One of the ways people can stay informed is actually subscribing to the Financial Freedom Report, financialfreedomreport.org. Shameless plug right now. But we basically cover stories like this. We cover Bitcoin stories. We cover financial repression, elections and protests, and all the ways that Bitcoin is a tool for human rights, but all the ways people are using financial control. Dictators are using financial control to strip away financial rights at the same time, right? So, yeah, highly encourage everyone to just do research, come to your own opinions. Don't just believe what any one person is tweeting online, because everybody's just got their own narrative that they're pushing these days. And I think it can be dangerous to fall into those.
That's a really good segment. I might have to clip that one because I think it's I think people don't really research El Salvador. They just see, hey, they have Bitcoin.
Hmm.
There's Bitcoin Beach, there's Berlin, and those are great projects. Like
Absolutely.
they what they are doing, like what Nayib Bukele is doing, doesn't take away anything from what they are doing. So that there's like two separate things. There's one is like bottom up, and the other one is top down. So I think that's a very important thing to note. But it's kind of sad. I mean, there's also this angle of um, if you are starting as a country that has such a high murder rate and is not just doing good, maybe to a certain extent you have to take radical ideas in there and like take things in there. But I don't like the cuddling to the IMF. I don't like that he's extending his own terms. I don't like those. Like I have no clue about that agent law. Like I literally heard that the first time, so I won't get into that. But like that just sounds also bad without really like researching that topic. So I feel like why, like if you want to restore the country, why does he need to do those things? And maybe there's an explanation to that, but like I don't see it. And it's like I get radical ideas in a radical situation, but I don't get why those things that he did there, and I just heard, make up for like making it a better country. Like I don't, that there's a disconnect for me.
Yeah, yeah, and yeah, I do agree with what you're saying. Like I think that's the problem. Is like, I'm not claiming to know what Bukele is thinking or planning, and I don't even want to project what he's going to do. But I look at what he's done, and I'm drawing a conclusion from that. And I think it would be very difficult to make excuses for all of the things that have happened. The deceiving Bitcoin purchases, the IMF deal, the passing of a foreign agents law, the indefinite re-elections, like none of these things, I mean, like he came into power through a legislative coup. Like there's all of these kind of like, there was a lot of little yellow flags, and now there's some really big red flags. And I just think we need to consider those when evaluating El Salvador. As much as we love Bitcoin, as much as we love that there is a nation state that was so innovative and forward thinking in adopting Bitcoin in this way, and that seemed so promising at the beginning, right? Like we have to be, as humans, be able to reevaluate our opinions, and the things that we think about as new information comes in, right? Like that is what a smart person would do in these situations. Um, but all that said, there are also amazing people and amazing projects in El Salvador doing amazing work, whether that's Bitcoin Beach, whether that's Mi Primer Bitcoin, My First Bitcoin, and John Dennehy, and the work they're doing on impartial Bitcoin education. Like there are a lot of amazing things that have come of this. We've seen amazing things of people using Bitcoin on the ground and circular economies. And people, I do I see lots of Salvadorans online too who are really happy with the way Bukele has done a lot of stuff as well. So it's not to say that everyone isn't unhappy with him. I mean, he has very high approval ratings. Though that being said, every authoritarian regime or dictator has really high approval ratings. That's actually like, in a way, like I often see people cite that, and I'm like, yeah, but like Vladimir Putin and all of these other dictators also have like the highest approval ratings in the world, right? Like if it's manufactured, then it's like absurdly high. But I don't know. I don't know. Maybe that is a real approval rating. Maybe that's not. I don't actually know. But it's just a funny comparison to make. But yeah, so like I don't think this, the being nuanced about El Salvador's situation, I don't think should take away from all the other amazing things that have come of it, and the people and the projects that people are building in El Salvador, and people who have been inspired by what El Salvador is doing and things like that.
100%. I have one question for each and every one of my guests that is new on the podcast. And the question is, what can we learn from you besides Bitcoin?
Well, that's a good question. Well, I mean, everybody kind of has like, I mean, like I was saying earlier, Bitcoin is very multifaceted, right? Like it spans so many different areas, so many different topics, and studies and things like that, whether it's history, money, physics, energy, um, economics, computer science, the list just goes on and on and on and on. So my areas that I come to Bitcoin for, and my advocacy for Bitcoin kind of stems from both. the economic side of Bitcoin and the human rights side of Bitcoin. So, my background in economics allowed me to understand Bitcoin quite rapidly, and also had me already questioning many of the things going on in our current system, and very quickly was able to see how Bitcoin fit into the economy, into the world that we're currently living in. So, I like to think that I try to blend my Bitcoin knowledge with sort of my economics education, and also, my human rights and financial freedom angle, and reporting and research all into one to kind of, make the case for Bitcoin, on both like a social and economic like imperative. So I think I like that unique view of kind of having those kind of viewpoints converge together, allows me to have a bit more nuance when I look at, for example, countries like El Salvador, but other kind of topics and stuff within the Bitcoin space. But all of that I have learned is ultimately a result of people much smarter than I am. It's a result of countless books that I have read on these topics. And I am just trying to amalgamate all this information and use it in the best way that I can, so that we can make this world a better place ultimately. I mean, as Gen Z yourself, like, I'm sure you get it, like Bitcoin is in large part just like something I have latched onto because it gives me hope. It gives me hope for the future. I don't know about yourself, but you know, before Bitcoin, like, I did have a much more like pessimistic view of the future, for various reasons. I know a lot of my friends and peers still have very pessimistic views of the future because they haven't found something that necessarily gives them that hope and passion that Bitcoin does. So it's just such a powerful technology, and I'm so grateful to have found it at the time that I did in my life, as I'm sure you feel the same way too. That it feels like we have something that we can actually build on, something that we can pursue, and something that we're interested in that can actually bring about the future we want to see.
Thank you for watching this video. This was only a snippet of the podcast. And if you want to watch the full episode and get all of the context of this episode, you can click right here or here. Oh, maybe also here.